Oh, it took a hot second for me to get that live.
Okay, let me know when.
Hey guys. Oh, hey Akeda. Thank the gods I made it, says Akeda. Okay, so you guys
Hello,
got a couple
everyone.
more seconds of Marrow making faces at the camera. Mostly because I don't know what's going on. They made some changes at StreamYard the past year. It's been a minute. It's been a minute. Marrow's camera has decided that she apparently descended from the heavens and is now an angel. We do not know what's going on with the lighting with it and the resolution. We've been trying to fix it for the last like 15 minutes. I don't know. Can you guys let us know if there is an audio desync when she talks in just a second? Because on my end there is, but we're not sure.
And then all of a sudden, yeah. Hello, everybody. How's everything?
Oh, it looks like it might have snapped back. It might have been fixed.
Yeah, well, just be aware that if I start making mouth sounds, and it's not, it's.
We're 2 minutes in. You are already losing your words.
I am. It's the tech gremlins, both for my tech and my brain. So the tech gremlins are going to be here. So please sacrifice a couple of USB sticks towards tech gremlins as a thank you for that.
All right. Just as a warning, we've been having a little bit of an audio delay on both of our sides today. So if it seems like we're cutting each other off or something, that's because there's a weird lag on our side. And then there's also actually a very slight delay between when we're talking and when we see your guys' chats and when you reply. So I've got a tab with the chat open in addition to the one that StreamYard lets me have, but so I can see your guys' chats in real time. But just know that the way that StreamYard works, we've got that audio delay kind of built in. So it's going to take me a second to respond to your guys' questions.
And also, that's the delay that we are having right now is also because, one, I don't exist, and two, I am also now descended from the heavens.
Yeah, Marrow is literally down in the country that apparently flat earthers have decided doesn't exist, and we've been having issues. We've been trying to solve this for basically the entire pre-stream prep that we usually do. So I have an outline, and I did some questions both in the Discord and in a couple of social media groups that I am in, because for those of you who don't know, and for those of you who are new to the channel and just saw the thumbnail and clicked on it, who the heck am I to talk about this topic? I am in a family with multiple generations of Boeing workers, and I have two partners that work there and are currently on strike. And that's very public knowledge. I've talked about where my partners work a few times, and they talk about it in the Discord all the time. Anyway, even if I didn't. So, like, that's public knowledge. We are down 2 incomes right now. We're doing okay. I picked up a new job because of the injuries from the car accident kind of messing up my ability to spend as much time doing the research and stuff as I needed to in order to put out enough videos to, help pay my bills and things. So that's part of why you guys haven't seen me for a year. I did put out a community tab post after the car accident settlement, kind of explaining a little bit about that. But, some people don't see those. So if you guys are wondering where the heck I've been, what happened is a drunk driver hit us because the accident happened at midnight. I don't know if it was on February 28th last year or if it was on March 1st. I'm not sure which one it was because it was really close to midnight. So I don't know which date they put in the police report. But we were sitting at a light at a highway entrance, and drunk driver smashes into the back of our car. For those of you who have seen the photo, you would have driven by that and thought somebody died. Thankfully, none of us did. But hubby got a really bad concussion. My back got even worse than it already is. And I ended up retraining back into an old field I used to be a part of in order to start paying off some of the medical debt from that we had to pick up. Because the settlement covered everything that our insurance covered. And we got a small payout from it too, but we also had to take on some debt due to the fact that hubby was out of work for a little while, and because I also couldn't make any money during that time. And it was really hard to try and negotiate that as part of a settlement because what I do for a living, my income's really unstable. So that's kind of what was going on with that. For those who are longtime viewers and wondering, where the heck have you been? That if you're not in the Discord, that's where I've been. But yeah, as far as who I am, I've been out on the strike lines. I am not, and I'm going to stress this, I am not a union representative. I don't work for Boeing. I am a spouse of someone who worked for Boeing. I have another partner who works for Boeing. I have a mother-in-law who just retired from Boeing. My grandmother worked at Boeing. An uncle of mine worked at Boeing. I am very much descended from Boeing family, very Pacific Northwest, Seattle in my blood. I've been to a lot of union meetings. We've been out on the strike lines a lot. So I know a lot about this. And my husband has worked for Boeing for over a decade and a half. So I lived through some of the events that we're going to talk about with him, hearing all about it. So I'm going to be speaking from my personal knowledge and a little bit of research. I might get dates, words, details slightly wrong. This isn't meant to be investigative journalism, but I've gotten a lot of DMs from people in the Discord and questions and things asking me to cover this topic because y'all know that I'm out there on the lines. And because I've barely been in the Discord, and I mentioned it once, and I guess everybody got excited about it. So that's what we're talking about. We're going to be talking about the history. We're going to be talking about like a little bit about what was actually in the offer that the press wasn't talking about. We're going to talk a little bit about why Boeing workers are so upset. But the first thing that I want to stress, and Mero and I actually talked about this a little bit because of some jokes she made when we were doing our pre-stream prep, is I want to stress that we need to separate the workers that are on strike right now from IAM 751. And I don't remember what the local number was for down in Portland, but they're also on strike. We need to separate them from the executives that made the terrible decisions, like them and the engineers, which they have a different union. They're SPEA, SPEEA. It's the engineers union. We need to separate those two groups of people from the executives that made the terrible decisions that led to all these tragedies you guys have been hearing about in the news. Because I've heard a lot of people be like, oh, Boeing, they've killed so many people. Okay, Boeing's corporate executive team, many of which are still in power, just in different positions. The CEO has been swapped out. That was Dave Calhoun. But several of the people who made these terrible decisions are still in charge of Boeing. So we need to separate them and their awful decision-making from the workers that are on strike, because the workers that are on strike are just as much victims of those people, maybe, just as much as what's been going on with these tragedies. Like, they have been put through heck and back, because I can't swear for the first 15 minutes because YouTube will have my head, over the past several years. And I've watched it happen to my husband. I've watched it happen to our other partner. I have talked to so many people on the strike lines and in these various groups that I'm a part of. Like, it is essential for us to make sure that that separation is the baseline, because we can't lay the problems with things like the door plug at the feet of the workers. We can't. It's mismanagement. It's the upper echelons that made these decisions. So I'm going to let Mero take over from here for a sec.
So I always assumed that it was always going to be the C-suite that did that anyway, because, they're not exactly known to be capitalism is basically the word of the day, is that they are not, like, the C-suite tends to just ignore safety, human rights, proper payment, that kind of thing. So I always assumed that the jokes about Boeing was about how the C-suite is sugaring everyone over. I don't know if there's another more polite term for the fusha word. Like, I'm trying not to swear, but I'm Australian. It goes against my core beliefs.
Yeah, it is against her very being. So I'm going to try to answer some of the questions that were brought up in the video discussions chat first, but so I am going to be making note of questions that you guys are asking. Zen Lizard, several of the McDonnell-Douglas people, including Stephanie Pope, who was Pope, P-O-P-E, Pope, who was the daughter of one of the big executives. She is actually has been one of the people sending out a lot of the company emails and posting company announcements and stuff from Boeing regarding the strike. There is an assumption among a lot of the striking workers that she's directly involved in the negotiations. I haven't heard anything from the union directly one way or the other about how much involvement she has, but she is definitely the front face of the company to the workers in the email they've been sending out to try to propagandize them into accepting these offers.
Okay.
So at the very
rewind?
least, she's from McDonnell-Douglas, and she is still one of the folks that are in there. We will talk about that when we get to that part of the story.
Okay, because I'm about to say what's McDonnell-Douglas, but we're going to address that, are we?
Yes, we are.
Yeah.
So the first thing we need to talk about, and I'm going to be putting these up here just to make it a little bit easier for me to go back and mark this stream because people might be interested in watching it later, is Jack Welch. And what does Jack Welch have to do with Boeing? Who the heck is he? He is the CEO, or was the CEO of General Electric. He basically redefined for several generations at this point what it meant to be a corporate executive in a very bad way. He was practically worshipped by politicians, by other CEOs. He did horrific things to a once powerful, proud company, including ranking workers by the amount of money they brought into the company and then firing the bottom 10% every year, or separating off divisions that he deemed as non-profitable and forcing them to become their own companies.
Also, if you're interested, there is a podcast called Behind the Swords.
Behind the name for someone who a person born out of wedlock. Again, we have to not swear for the first 20 to 45 minutes of a stream. They say it's 5 to 15. I don't believe them. I've gotten dinged for less.
Yeah. So behind the unmarried parents, and with
feel free to type it in the chat. You're not going to get dinged for swearing. I don't have a Nightbot.
So yeah. They actually did a 2-part episode on this guy. If you want more detail on it, this guy is the reason why union busting is a thing. He is the reason why.
No. Okay. No. Union busting was a thing way before Jack Welch. Union busting, like, you want to talk? I talked a little bit about union busting in company towns actually in my company town stream that I did a couple years ago. So if you guys are curious about that, but no, he is one of the reasons why union busting became an even bigger fad. But actually, he's more well known for outsourcing. That is the big thing he brought to corporate America.
Yeah, and he's the reason why that, you can't stay for 20 years in a company anymore. He's the reason why you, mass layoffs is a thing. Like he's
stock buybacks.
Stock buybacks. He's that guy. He's the guy who started. Like, he wasn't the 100%, but he was probably about 95% of the reason why that's the thing today. So, yeah. IACADA is yes.
That is the acronym. I typed it in the chat. We just can't say it right now.
Yeah.
I am not going to ignore this, Nix. Thank you so much for your $10 super chat. And yes, IACADA, like Ronald McDonald Douglas. They're about as bad. They were about as bad as McDonald's. So what is the big deal with Jack Welch? Why are we talking about him? Well, for one thing, he's inspired a lot of the absolutely sharky business practices in corporate America, and GE was basically enabled by the government to do a lot of very illegal things. They're part of the reason why wage theft is so rampant. And one of the big issues here, and part of the reason that this is so relevant, is because several of the people that are still in the C-suite today, which for those of you who don't know, C-suite means corporate executives. Typically C here stands for chief. So if your job is like chief executive officer or chief, the chief financial officer, CFO, CEO, when you're talking about that, those are the C-suite. They are the big wigs. They are the heads of their departments. They are the heads of their departments. They are the managers. They are the people making most of the biggest decisions with the board of directors. So when you're talking about C-suite, that's what that means. So Ryan says, thank you so much for your $10 super chat. By the way, you guys don't have to super chat for me to pop your chats up. I'm going to be taking a sec before I answer questions because I'm trying to get through the stuff in my outline. I think Portland IAM is Local Lodge 63, sources KOIN16 News. So thank you for that. I didn't remember which one Portland was. I just know that they are also on strike with IAM 751 because 751 is the local lodge out here in the Pacific Northwest.
Okay, can you explain those briefly, or are we going to go back to that bit later?
Okay, so quick terminology bit. IAM is the International Association of Machinists. Lodges are like they're like geographic segments with their own miniature governance under the whole of the IAM Machinist Union. So the IAM Machinist Union has an international headquarters somewhere over on the East Coast. I don't remember exactly where it is. And then the local lodges are anywhere where a company has like the workers of a company or some segment of them have unionized under IAM, they will have a district lodge. It's just part of how union organization works. So when we're talking about 751, which is most of what I'm going to be using, just include Portland mentally there also because they are also on strike. But 751 is the lodge that covers the whole of the Pacific Northwest. So there are several different sites out here from Seattle to Everett to Frederickson to Renton. There's one other one that I can think of, like that's out by the train tracks. I can't remember the name of that one, but there are a bunch of different factory sites that do different things here in the Pacific Northwest, and all of them are under 751.
All right, thank you.
So when we talk about the IAM, Boeing's been unionized for a long time. Long time. So I did get a question in the video discussion chat asking, has Boeing always been this way? I don't know of a company that unionized because they treated their workers well, just saying. But they did treat their workers considerably better back when they were more engineering focused and were led by engineers, which brings us to our second point of history, which is the McDonnell-Douglas merger. All right, what is McDonnell-Douglas? McDonnell-Douglas was, if I remember right, when they merged, the number 3 aerospace company in the world. They primarily handled military contracts. And this meant that they had a completely different culture than Boeing did. Boeing did not really have much of a military sector. They primarily handled commercial airlines. They were primarily led by CEOs that were engineers. They were very focused on developing new planes. It's how they got their reputation for quality. That doesn't mean that they were always hunky-dory and rosy, but like the employees had pensions. There was zero-cost healthcare for a very long time. I don't remember exactly when that changed, which contract it was. I think it was before my husband got hired on, but I might be wrong about that. I'd have to double check with him. He is in the chat and he'll probably answer. But there was a much better safety culture. It was much more open. The corporate office was actually here in Seattle by the 2 main factories, which were Renton and Everett. Renton, a bunch of the property got sold off after the big earthquake that happened in the early 2000s. But it was originally the biggest factory of the 2. And then Everett got expanded after they sold a bunch of the property at Renton to develop basically a mall, like an open kind of, it's not actually a mall. It's like a strip mall. There's a whole entertainment center that's across the street from where Renton is. Everett is where the 777 is currently built, and some of the 787 Dreamliners are finished. They get flown up from another factory down in South Carolina, which we will talk about in the third part of my outline. So that's just to give you guys, when I start talking about, Fredericton or Seattle or Renton or Everett, these are all the different sites where the factories are. Talking about why it's such a big deal that after the McDonnell-Douglas merger, they moved their corporate headquarters, we'll get there. Okay. So McDonnell-Douglas, their culture was radically different than Boeing's at this time. And there's a reason for that. And that is military contracts are brutal. The way that military bidding works is basically they're trying to bid down the government. Everybody's bidding for the lowest cost, quickest turnaround to entice the government for a very stable contract. In other words, cutthroat, how can we reduce costs to get the most out of this contract that we already had to cut down in costs just to get it from the government. So McDonnell-Douglas, several of the leaders of McDonnell-Douglas were directly trained by Jack Welch or were inspired by him.
Yeah,
And this
so just to, I'm not sure we explained why Jack Welch was so important. He was the guy who was like, rather than encouraging and not nurturing the workers of the company, he was the one that basically encouraged nurturing the stocks of the company at the expense of the workers. So yeah, I just wanted to make sure, because I was like, I don't think we really explained that particularly well. So yeah, just remind that, just to give you a very, very brief background, is it's just like, the more money, this is when he was the one that really started the whole cutting costs and prioritizing income. And yeah, and
no,
so
not just income for the company, that because
income
that
for
would,
the company.
that would imply that they wanted to develop better products. No, prioritizing stockholder returns, dividends. That is what his entire thing was. Milk the company, bleed it dry directly into the vampiric palms of the stockholders. That was Jack Welch's entire philosophy.
Yeah, so he basically started impurification, because I still can't swear.
Yep, we got 20 more minutes. All right, so now we're talking about the McDonnell-Douglas merger. So Boeing is this, like, I believe either number 1 or number 2, I think they were number 1 at this point, commercial airliner, but they basically didn't really have a defense aviation department yet. They wanted to break into that. McDonnell-Douglas was a failing company. Even though they were number 3, they were still kind of in the hole, and they were getting bled dry by this cutthroat corporate culture. So, of course, what happens? Boeing looks at McDonnell-Douglas, and we look at a merger. But what's really interesting here about this merger is that typically in corporate mergers, the new company, there's some kind of agreement, but the new company shares get liquidated or they get turned into some percentage of the new company stock. And then the board of directors for the old company get relocated into some subordinate position or just simply let go. What happened in this was that the two boards of directors basically merged, putting the McDonnell-Douglas sharks in charge of Boeing alongside the original Boeing board of directors. And in fact, some of the Boeing board of directors were ousted to make room for the McDonnell-Douglas. So what we had was a clash of a very development-focused, forward-looking culture with this cutthroat, brutal, militaristic, how can we reduce costs, no holds barred type culture. And if you don't believe that the takeover ended up being completely total, open up another tab. Don't close the stream because we don't want to lose viewers, but open up another tab, Google McDonnell-Douglas logo, and compare it to the current Boeing logo, and your jaw will drop. Because the current Boeing logo is literally just the McDonnell-Douglas logo with the Boeing font in blue underneath it. Like, the takeover was pretty total. So yeah, I see Mero doing that. I would highly suggest any of you that are curious about this, like, you want to talk about like the total takeover of Boeing, this is how bad this was. And
yeah,
this is
it's where pretty exactly the same.
Yeah. And so this is where, okay, so now later on, the CEO that was in charge of Boeing ended up taking a whole bunch of advice, and then we ended up with a Jack Welch protege who takes over the Boeing company. And this is where we start getting into the development of some of these new planes, because Airbus comes out with a new model that is just wiping the floor with Boeing, and Boeing is kind of caught unawares. Boeing ends up deciding that they are going to, instead of developing a new aircraft, they're going to, quote unquote, modify their original 737, one of the most popular aircrafts in the entire world, like, reliable. There are still some of these in the sky today. They're going to, quote unquote, modify that. But instead of the 37 MAX or the 787 Dreamliner, instead of the two of them like being developed completely whole cloth in-house by Boeing, the 787 especially, Boeing goes, okay, well, how can we save some money? I know. What if we fire a bunch of our engineers and move a bunch of their jobs down to California and make them reapply for it? And then after that, you know what else we could do? We could then tell our suppliers that they need to design the parts they're going to be making for us. And then our engineers just have to figure out how to fit them together.
That makes perfect sense. So much. Yeah. That's how design works completely.
So this is why a number of the workers up at the Everett plant call the 787 the Lego plane, because there were pieces of it produced all over the world, primarily in the Pacific Northwest for a lot of them, but a number of them all over the world. There are serious supply line issues. We'll get into those when we get to the modern day, but we're talking about kind of some of the decisions and the culture that led up to this. So then, we lost Marrow. Device is not connected. Hopefully we can get her back. So then with the 37 MAX and the 787, we get up to 2008. And in 2008, they negotiate a contract. It's not the greatest. There are some takeaways. But then just couple years later, they then get an emergency because they're worried about the company and their state of the company and their finances. So the IAM International, I don't know how much local was involved in this, but I know that International negotiates a contract extension and puts it up for a vote. So then we get the first contract extension. I think that was in 2010, but I might be getting my dates wrong there. The next one happens in 2013. Again, IAM International leadership negotiates a contract with Boeing outside of contract negotiations that are supposed to happen at the end of the contract. And then they put up for a vote a demand from Boeing. And this time, Boeing is playing real dirty. They come to the table and they go, hey, you know the 777X, this exciting, shiny new plane, the wide body that we're going to be building that's going to be taking over the 777. Remember what I said about Everett, right? That's the main plane that's built up there. We're going to go build that in the whatever state gives us the best benefits package and make that a big public display in the press about who's offering us what, unless your union votes to give up their pensions.
That's a bad idea.
And they negotiated this in the back room outside of a contract ending. So there's no strike. The union has zero leverage right now, right? The union can't, because there's no strike clauses in their contract. So they can't strike.
Yeah, I don't like the idea of not being able to strike. I think that's kind of disgusting. I understand why they think some people, like some industries, shouldn't strike, such as healthcare or like firefighting, police, that kind of thing.
We'll talk about the firefighters. They got locked out a few months ago. Because they've got their own union.
The idea of not allowing anyone to strike, I think everyone should be able to strike, but you can actually get.
So they're not allowed to strike while their contract is in effect. They can strike as soon as the contract is over, which is why they're on strike right now. The contract expired on either the 13th or the 14th of September. I think it was the 13th, but it might have been the 14th. Hubby can correct me in the chat.
Yeah.
Basically. We're not even done with this.
Yeah, part. I'm just saying my personal opinion is that you should be able to strike whenever. I mean, I don't give a shit.
I agree. Anti-strike clauses are terrible in contracts, and they shouldn't be there. But I understand why. I understand why sometimes they end up as a concession, but they're not great. All right, so we're at a point where we are between contracts, so they're not allowed to strike. They have no leverage. However, the union workers.
Ali, Sionic makes a really good question. How would they stop them from striking?
The company has every right to fire you for insubordination if people go en masse and strike outside of a strike contract, and they can also file what's known as an unfair labor practice, or ULP. If you hear me saying that in the future, that's what that stands for, ULP, unfair labor practice, with the National Labor Relations Board, NLRB. We will talk about them in a little bit because there's a lot to do with the current strike and them. But basically, if the union decides to break that clause in the contract, the the company can go to the National Labor Relations Board and go, this is an unfair labor practice. They are striking over economic conditions. In other words, they're striking over not liking this contract when their current contract that they are on, they have this lawful vote that is currently up, and the contract they're currently on is not expired. They have no right to do that. And actually, unless there are unfair labor practices documented with the NLRB, if your union strikes in certain states, they still, like, just for economic reasons, just because they don't like the contract, unless some manager has screwed up and your union has filed a ULP. Okay, reminder, I'm not a lawyer. I just know a lot about this stuff. So I may be wrong about this, but I've read the regulations recently because I was getting into arguments with people about it on the strike lines. The company can fire your union workforce between contracts if there are not unfair labor practices attached to your strike, because pro-labor legislation in the country federally has been weakened severely.
Yay, Reagan.
Yeah, so they would be doubly effed if they were to try to strike in between contracts. Yeah, and we also are in an at-will employment state, which is another fun little term, which basically means that as long as it's not for a protected characteristic, meaning you're not disabled and they fired you because you were disabled, you're not black and they fired you because you were black, you're not, Jewish and they fired you because you were Jewish, your boss can fire you because he doesn't like the color of your eyes, or the way that your like pearly whites are glinting in the sunlight, or whatever, unless you have union protections and a contract that says otherwise.
Yeah, which is not great.
Psionic, that is basically what they did in South Carolina. And we'll get there when we get to the modern part of the history. So yes, they absolutely would fire basically the whole team. But also remember that there are always what are called scabs, another little nugget of definitional terminology there. Scabs are people who cross the picket line and go to work during a strike. There are always scabs, and you would have to get, at the time, over 40,000 workers to agree to all walk out on the same day, thereby then triggering the risk of them getting fired and also the union potentially getting fined and in trouble with the NLRB.
Don't be a scab.
Don't be a scab.
There are, again, certain industries like there are like nurses that work during a strike aren't considered scabs because they're people will die without healthcare workers, but like those people get paid like 4 or 5 times more than they normally would or something. Like there is subtleties to that.
Well, yeah, and there's also some workers that might not be in the union or that might be in a different union. Like, for example, SPIA is still supportive of the strike, but their contract does not allow them to co-strike. So they can't walk off the job in support of IAM, but they can, come out on their breaks and stuff and talk to the IAM people. Their union actually just donated something close to $100,000 to the hardship fund for the IAM. So they've been huge solidarity. Shout out to the engineers union. They're awesome. Like, if any of you are in the chat, you guys are awesome. You probably aren't. I don't know if I have anybody in my IRL actually knows all that much about my YouTube. I keep those parts of my life pretty separate, but for those of if any of you are in there,
shout out, solidarity.
And actually, that's a fun little fact if it's true. Why are they called scab? It's a pun on the fact that you don't picket scabs. Don't picket. PICKET for those of you that are just podcasting. So there we go. We were talking about the McDonnell-Douglas merger and the contract vote in 2014, which, we are at this point, pensions. Why are pensions such a big issue? And what happened in 2014? So what happened was they put this horrible contract that I was just describing that was like, yeah, we're totally going to build this plane in another state that gives us better tax benefits if you guys don't give up your pensions. So the local put it up for a vote, and this was before the Christmas break because there are 2 votes on this. They put it up for a vote, and the workers say, heck no. Like, screw that. We don't want it. We're not giving up our pensions. You must be crazy. So Boeing goes on this whole big media spree and is like, okay, all these other states, we are going to build a factory in your state and it'll be great for all your jobs. And you can find articles on this from back in 2013, 2014 of all these states creating these massive tax packages in order to attract Boeing to their states. One of them was South Carolina, and they did end up building a plant there, a non-union plant in a right-to-work state, right to work being a complete and utter oxymoron, which is right to work without a union. Right-to-work states are terrible, and you don't want to live in one. And if you do live in one, then get out there fighting to unionize and get better protections, because right-to-work states are terrible.
Yeah.
So getting back to what happened. So what do? The Union International and the locals stressed that it was international that did this. They say, well, there weren't enough people who voted on the contract in 2013. There wasn't a large enough. It was only about half of you. Don't quote me on this, but I think it was like 25 or 30,000 people out of over 45,000 at the time that voted on it, and they voted no. So the IAM International is like, we're going to hold a revote. And when do they hold it? They hold it on January 3rd. If any of you know anything about Boeing, Boeing workers get a vacation from Christmas Day until New Year's Day, or until the first weekday that would be a work day after New Year's Day. This particular year, 2014, that was the 3rd. However, they do get paid vacation and sick leave because unions are awesome. And so a lot of people that have a lot more seniority and have vacation time would often take the rest of that week, if it was a partial week, off and go out of town to go see relatives and stuff like that. So in 2014, the International of the Union goes, we're going to come observe this time and make sure the count is accurate, because there weren't enough people who voted. They put it up for a vote again, and allegedly it passed at 51%. I have talked to a couple of people who claim that they ballot counted and that it was that. However, there were also several lawsuits claiming that the International might have rigged the vote. In addition to that, state legislators here in Washington passed the biggest tax break package that has ever been seen on the state level, and it was so severe that the World Trade Organization got involved and went, that's illegal. You guys don't get to ship into Europe or other, like, certain other places until you fix that, which Boeing then had to voluntarily refuse not to take it. But like the governor the governor even stepped in and they were like, vote yes. But only about 13,000 people voted at all. And the International was like, that's enough, because it was 51%. But, but wait, there's more. This didn't just strip them of their pensions until the end of their contract period. Oh, no. This contract extension locked them into a terrible contract where they only got 1% raise every other year for 10 years. So when we are getting up to the modern day, remember what I told you. They had done a contract emergency extension that took away a few things after 2008. And I want to say it was 2010 or 2011, but I might have gotten the date wrong. Again, this is very, very early in my relationship history here. So there was a contract extension after the 2008 contract and another contract extension in 2014. They have not been able to bargain a contract in 16 years.
Jesus.
16 years. I'm just going to let that sink in for a second and let you guys process. Remember, the typical contract length for this union was 3 to 4 years.
So what was 16 years ago? 16 years ago, 2008?
2008 was the last time they were able to bargain for a new contract.
So let's...
By bargain, I mean actually bargain and not backdoor deals, which, by the way, the union they got absolutely furious. IAM International leadership, there was such an outcry that most of them ended up resigning. And then a group of union leaders from IAM 751 and some of the other locals that were pissed off when they heard about this got together and they passed what was called the Workers' Bill of Rights. And that guarantees that without a vote from and notification to the membership, the union cannot negotiate outside of natural negotiating times, such as the ending of a contract. So they can't do that again.
Can I just point out, so 2008, let's think of all of the disasters that have happened since then. We've had the global financial crisis, which happened in 2008. Wasn't there like a mini crash in something like 2018 or something like that.
Yeah, and then there was the
And
pandemic
then
recession,
the pandemic, yeah. So
and we're
there's
in
been
a
like
sort of unspoken recession right now, actually, with all of
mm,
the inflation following the second dot-com bubble and another real estate bubble that happened because of the pandemic.
yeah, so, like, just think of all of the major issues that have happened since 2008. Like, obviously, the global financial crisis and the pandemic, but there's been a couple of little blips of international, financial woes that have happened in the past 16 years, and these people have had, what did you say, like, 8% pay rise in the part during that
In the
time?
past 10 years, yeah, from 2014 to now, it was 1% every other year. They've had like 5 or 6%. I want to say it might be 8, but they've had like 5 or 6% pay raises in like the past 10 years.
Yeah.
Just to give you guys an idea, inflation in my local area, in the greater Seattle area, is 45% in the past 10 years. They have had less than 10% wage increases on top of rising medical costs, because this contract also increased the cost share for employees for their healthcare insurance
Mm.
to 15% cost share, which, like, if you don't think that that's a lot, that's going to be a something like a $10,000 bill if you have a heart attack minimum. That it's pretty nasty.
Yeah, like, who would have thought that, socialized healthcare was a bad idea? Like, it's always a great idea to, have to give up a third of your pay for the year just because you've had a heart attack. Maybe you should have eaten better and gone for more runs. Sorry.
So, well, and I mean, there's also those of us who are like literally born with health conditions, right? Like, yeah, okay, let's talk about like heart attacks. Let's say you're not somebody who's genetically predisposed to cholesterol and you like a few too many burgers and really prefer to sit at your desk job and just never go to the gym. That's a lot of people, right? I'm not judging anybody. Like even if that's not your issue, I'm one of those people who was born with a whole bunch of genetic problems. You guys know my mom's an addict. I was born with a bunch of issues. Our healthcare costs, especially, after even the car accident, like what's going to stop some, dummy on the road from smashing into your car when you're sitting at a light, right? Like you can't
Mm.
say drive more carefully when it's the truck, like when the truck was drunk off his ass at, who knows when. We're at 40 minutes. I can swear now. Um,
Yay. Well, let's take what happened to me the other week as a perfect example of, you know, uh, socialized healthcare. So a week and a bit ago, I got a knock on the door and I jumped up and I ran to go and get the door and I felt a pop in my calf muscle and I was screaming in pain because I had just torn my calf muscle. Don't do that if you can avoid it. However, you can't really avoid it because it's one of those injuries that anyone can get. So it's not me being uncoordinated or anything like that. The only way I could prevent it is to strengthen the calf muscle. But even then, like athletes can still, it's a very common injury in athletes, the injury that I've been given. I am not an athlete. Okay, so there's those injuries and those illnesses you literally cannot skip. So I
and you might
rang.
also, well, and you might also think, like with the car accident example too, like, well, shouldn't the car accident person pay for it? The guy hit and ran. The only reason we even were able to do a settlement with him was because we took pictures of his plate. Anyway, continue your story.
Yeah. So I rang the ambulance, and an ambulance guy came. I have a conspiracy theory because he was not very bad looking. He was definitely eye candy, and I have a conspiracy theory is that they hire attractive ambos just so you've got something to look at and to calm you down. Because goodness gracious, he was good looking. Anyway, so he wrapped me up, unfortunately, in not other ways, and took me to the hospital. I went through the hospital. Was also treated in the ER by an incredibly attractive doctor. Again, I do believe that the average attractiveness of emergency department personnel is higher than the average population.
Maybe over there.
And I paid nothing. They gave me some pain relief. They gave me some things and scanned me to see if I hadn't done anything major. And they just said, if you're still in pain in a couple of days, go and see your doctor. Thankfully, it was healing quite nicely, so I didn't have to go and see my doctor. And I paid nothing. I paid absolutely nothing. Look, I was, that's true. Maybe getting thirsty might not bring my blood pressure down, but at the time, I was very grateful to be looking at a very attractive man. He was gorgeous. And so yeah, but like, if that had happened to you, Ali, you'd be spending how many thousands?
It depends. Like, if it were, like, if I had just, like, twisted my ankle or something like that, then I might go to urgent care and spend a few hundred, or just a copay. But, like, with the car accident, the only reason my health insurance even agreed to cover it while we were pending litigation was because the guy hit and ran. And because I didn't have what's called PIP protection or personal injury protection, which we now have on our policy. But basically, the only reason my health insurance agreed to cover it was because we didn't know if we could hold the guy responsible. Thankfully, we got photos of his plate, and he wasn't one of those dicks that like has a fake front plate with fake numbers on it. So we were able to get the plate numbers, and we were able to reach a settlement, which is the reason you guys didn't hear much about the car accident from March until around February, March-ish of this year, was because my lawyer told me, say as little as humanly possible. She did look at the few things that I put out in Patreon, but in case it went to litigation, in case they didn't want to settle properly, which thankfully the representative on the insurance side was like, yeah, we don't really have a leg to stand on. The guy like committed a felony. He drunkly hit you. You guys have multiple witnesses. There's 3 of you. There's the, the person in front of you that he smashed you into, they pretty much gave up the good number at the beginning. But like, if it weren't for that, then anything that I said, even though I wanted to keep you guys in the loop, could have potentially been used in the court case, no matter how favorable it initially looks on me, especially while treatment was ongoing and they were still figuring out all the things that were wrong with me and my husband. I just could not give you guys updates because my lawyer basically told me, hey, it'll screw your case if you do, no matter how good or honest or well-intentioned your updates are. So don't talk about it. Just don't do it. That is, not official legal advice, but it is very good advice. If you ever get into a car accident, don't talk about it on Facebook. Don't talk about it on Twitter. Don't talk about it in Discord. They're going to ask you what accounts you have. Just don't do it. Like, get a lawyer right away. Personal injury lawyers are pro bono. They work off of a commission, usually a third of whatever your settlement is. Get a lawyer right away. Talk to your lawyer. Talk through your lawyer. Don't talk to your insurance company or theirs. Just talk to your lawyer. Let your lawyer do the talking. Listen to what they tell you. You'll get a better settlement.
Yeah. All right.
Ikeda, I have no idea if the drunk driver went to jail. I don't even know if the cops hunted him down or anything. We didn't get any update from the police on that. So I have no clue. But coming back to the pension, so the pension gets frozen in 2014. And the media likes to say, well, they voted away their pension at 51%. A third of eligible union members voted on that and voted 51%. The majority of them were on vacation. The majority of people could not make it to that contract vote. And the IAM International forced a re-vote after they rejected it. And I want to hammer this home because media's like, they voted away their pensions. That is only technically true in the most italicized BS sense of the word.
It's in the same thing as like, oh, the Americans voted in Trump. No.
Psionic, we settled out of court. So no, I didn't even have to do a deposition or I think it would actually be a examination under oath, since there wasn't actually a court case. We settled out of court and they gave us a pretty good settlement. Like it covered my medical, basically. At least it covered most of what the insurance paid for my medical. The rest of it, I'm still working off some of the debt I took on.
Yeah. So but like, people say, oh, that the Americans voted in Trump. And it's like, well, 1/3 of Americans didn't vote. 1/3 voted in Democrats.
The majority of the people who did vote actually didn't vote for Trump, but like the majority of the Electoral College did.
Yeah,
but we're not going
exactly.
to get super political
Yeah, we
on this
won't
train
go into
because,
that, but yeah,
yeah,
it's
we're not going to
that's
get super
I'm putting
political
that
on
into
there.
no. Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. Like, you can't say when 2/3 of the people didn't even vote or did not vote that anyway, let's continue.
All right, so but 2014 pensions get frozen. Everybody that has vested a pension, what does vesting means? It means that you qualify for one. You have gotten enough years of service in X company, your company, Boeing in this case, that you are now eligible for the pension. Like everybody who had vested all of their years of service up until the point of that contract get frozen. The pension fund itself is still being funded by Boeing because guess what? Their C-suite, their salaried managers, and their executives, like most of their salaried non-union employees, get pensions. Their C-suite gets pensions. This includes the CEO, by the way, and the CFO. They get pensions in addition to their insane compensation packages and stock options. They also get $300,000+ per month pensions.
What the
You can swear. We're after the 45-minute mark.
what
Just
the
don't do it
fuck?
excessively.
What the fuck? Who needs $300,000 a fucking month?
C-suite apparently. That
Like,
they need to be able to buy. They need to be able to buy a house at least every other month just from their pension alone. Apparently.
Good point. Who need I don't. Yeah. Who needs to?
Apparently, they need it. They need to be able to buy like the most exotic whale caviar humanly possible. Like
Yeah.
I don't even know how they manage to harvest eggs from whale ovaries, but they will find a way.
Yeah. But you got to remember those plebs. How dare they be greedy enough to ask for cost of living?
Well, and here's the
Bloody
thing:
greedy
Royal
bastards.
pension wasn't even that amazing. What it was stable. So we're gonna talk a little bit because the pension is one of the biggest sticking points in this. So let's talk about pensions and other retirement because I was surprised to find out that you didn't actually know all that much when we were talking earlier about different options for retirement in the United States. So let's talk a little bit about retirement. I know this is boring. None of this is financial advice. I am not a financial guru. I just know a few things about markets and I know a little bit enough about these things to get me in trouble. So, what is a pension? Pension is once you are vested, a guaranteed payment. Typically, these are defined benefit payment plans. What that means is that the company agrees either a percentage of your average wages when you left or a per year amount up to a certain maximum for your years of service. They agree that they are going to fund a fund that says that when you retire from this company, now keep in mind, this doesn't always apply if you're like laid off or something, depends on the plan. But they agree that when you retire from the company at the appropriate retirement age, the way Boeing's works was $95 per year of service per month as a pension. So if you worked 10 years before you retired, you got $950 a month until you die. Or there was an option that I believe decreased it by like a quarter or a third or something. And I don't remember what the exact percentage is. I'd have to go read the contract again. I've read the whole thing. But you could also agree to pass it to your spouse. And I believe it was half of it goes to your spouse when you die. And that cuts the amount that you can pull by yourself. But it means that if you passed away before your spouse did, your spouse can inherit that pension. Your kids cannot. So this is a payment to you, maybe your spouse if your pension plan allows for it, but it is a stable, guaranteed payment that the company has to fund. And there are actually federal protections for pensions that basically said if they misinvest or something in their pension fund, which are usually required to be very stable stocks. When they do that, if a stock market crash screws it over or whatever, the government has some protection over pensions. So if you work 30 years for Boeing, that's just under $3,300, or if that's just under $3,000 that you'd be getting per month for the rest of your life. It's not a lot. You can't retire on it by yourself, but it can complement things like Social Security. It can complement things like the other two major types of retirement investments we're about to talk about, which are the 401k and the Roth IRA.
I have a quick question. So what happens, like, let's say you've got the pass it on to my spouse if they outlive me. What if their spouse dies before they do? Do they get the full pension after that, or is it just like too bad, too sad?
That would be a question for a financial advisor, and I believe it would be based off of the plan. So you would have to look into that. I just know that if you want your spouse to be able to inherit it, it does cut how much of your pension you can draw, because they then have to prepare for, they might be paying half of your pension out to your spouse until they die instead of just until you do.
Yeah.
And this is especially a big deal if you have, like, say, a 10-year age gap with your spouse or something like that, where your spouse is they're far more likely to outlive you.
Yeah.
Which, was a lot more common back when pensions were more common. All right. So what are these other two accounts that we're talking about? Because the pension, as many of you know who live in the US, has been unfortunately somewhat replaced by what's called a 401k. Now, the 401k is actually named after the statute which governs it. And it is a pre-tax retirement stock savings account. So what pre-tax means here is that when you deposit money into your 401k usually as a percentage of your wages, they're usually offered by employers, but you can also start them with a bank if you, say, work for yourself or own your own business. If you put money into them, a percentage of your checks, a lot of employers will match a percentage. That money and the employer match does not get taxed now. It and anything it grows into gets taxed when you withdraw it after you retire, or if you have to make an emergency withdrawal, it gets taxed a lot. Don't do that. You might have to, but don't do it anyway. So a 401k is a risky, basically like a stock portfolio. Some of them are managed, where they get invested into mutual funds or stock blocks. Some of them are not. Most are managed, and most of them have very high management fees, but basically it is either paying someone to invest them for you into these stock blocks, where you can kind of choose what percentage. That's how the voluntary investment plan, or VIP, at Boeing works. Or you can, if you get one through a bank, you might be able to invest directly in some stocks or in mutual funds. So a 401k, people will tout, oh, well, the average growth is, 10% per year or something like that. I think it's like 7% actually. That's average, first off. Second, that takes into account dot-com bubbles and residential bubbles and things like that. Third, anybody remember the 2008 crash? Because a lot of people were forced to go back to work because their 401ks and their stock portfolios just absolutely tanked. So basically, the biggest thing with the 401k is it's putting all of the risk on you. And something similar with the Roth IRA, but the Roth IRA is a little bit more tax complicated. That you still have to pay taxes on your income when you put it in one of those. And you also end up paying taxes on your tax bill for what the company puts in. I don't remember how the taxes work on the growth, but the money that you deposit yourself does not get taxed when you withdraw it. So basically, with a Roth IRA, you are banking that taxes are going to be higher later in your life than they are right now. With a 401k, you are banking on basically you want it to grow more. So you're banking on not paying taxes until you withdraw it to have more available to grow. They both have their strengths and balances. A lot of financial planners suggest that you have both. Most of us don't make enough money to have either as a really viable option, to be entirely honest, including a lot of people at Boeing, which is where we're getting to.
But the C-suite gets $300,000 a month, so
the CEO or the CFO does, one of them. There was an article recently. Let me look it up. But a Boeing executive got like a $300,000 some odd dollar pension. So let me find that again.
And while you're doing that, I'll have a quick talk about what happens in Australia. So in Australia, we have something called superannuation. And basically, it's very similar to the 401k in the sense that part of our income gets taken out and put into a company. And there's industry super funds and that sort of stuff, and then you can withdraw from that when you retire. And it's also we get a pension as well, and that's paid for by the government. So if you don't have much of a superannuation, you still get money from the government to, or if your super runs out before you die, because that's also a thing that happens, you can still get pull money from our Social Security. So that's what I understand. Yeah, so that's how it works over here, and I think it's a really good idea. To do that because, yeah, you're guaranteed money, and if you die before you run out, it's an inheritance for people. So, because as some of you may know, my mum passed away a few years ago, and she had some left over in her of her superannuation left over. So so we got a little bit of that when she passed away. Still would prefer to have my mum though.
All right, so David Calhoun, the actual CEO, had a $45 million compensation package that he was given despite basically being fired. He is the one who made all of the decisions pretty much that led up to all of the disasters that you guys have been hearing about in the news, by the way. He had a nearly 40, like a 30 or a 40 or 50% raise. Like it was 45%, I think, raise that he gave, that the board of directors gave him. And yeah, this is despite tanking the company stock by 32%, by the way. So like the one thing that they're supposed to care about.
Yeah, but come on, they need more money. Millionaires need more money. Remember that. Always need more money.
Yeah, according to the Bloomberg law, it says Calhoun was paid $2.5 million in 2023 in salary, while Deal, who is another one of the Boeing executives who stepped down recently, let me go get his name, Executive Vice President Stan Deal, who is also in charge doing a lot of this stuff. According to this, Deal netted $2.4 million in salary, bonus, and other compensation for 2023. Calhoun declined an estimated $2.8 million bonus payout in 2023 in a short-term incentive, but he reaped more than $30 million worth of stock awards, bringing his total compensation for the year to $33 million. Deal was awarded nearly $10 million in stocks based off the price of $260 at the year's end, which, by the way, it's down to $150 or some odd as of last time I checked, which was yesterday. Bringing his total potential payout for 2023 to more than $12.5 million, including a $756,000 bonus.
All right, hang on. I'm just trying to figure hang on, not 2 point. Okay, I'm just trying to do 2, 5. That's 50,000, 25,000, 250,000. All right, divided by 2080, which is $1,201.92 an hour.
According to this, his compensation went up 42% between the 2 years and 45% since 2022.
Right. Okay. So
yeah.
Someone is earning my fortnightly paycheck in an hour.
Yep.
Just let that sink in. But Boeing can't afford to pay people more money. Just let that sink in. Just let that sink
in. So yeah.
J3 Sebastian. No, that's probably me.
Yeah. If it's laggy on your end, I'm sorry. Let us know if you guys are having lag issues.
Yeah, it's probably me because tech gremlins, and also I don't exist, which is always a reason why it lags.
So yeah, that is a thing. And then on top of those payouts, they also get executive pensions. And there was an article recently that I am struggling to find that showed that the C-suite gets pensions on top of that massive compensation package. One of which stepped down recently and gets 300 and some odd thousand a month. It was like 311,000 a month.
Jesus Christ.
A month. That would be enough at $100 per year. That would be enough to pay approximately 300 or approximately 100 workers their pensions if
So
they worked, but all
300.
100 of them worked 30 years
Okay, $300,000 a month is 3,600,000 as a pension
per year.
per year.
That's
Per
a
year.
pension.
As a pension per year.
That is more than most of us will earn in our lifetimes.
Are you feeling hungry because something? Let's go eat some people. I'm feeling quite hungry right now.
I mean,
Been a
Boeing
long.
exec says let them eat cake. On top of that, though, in an executive board of directors meeting, one of the things that the Boeing workers are particularly pissed about is that David Calhoun once said, when asked if he was considering retiring anytime soon, he says, "Why would I? The workers are cowering, and the stock prices are rising."
So, do you like sauteing? Do you want to like marinate, or slow cook? Kind of do like, or a spit roast? How do you want to do it? I know you're vegetarian, but I'm sure you can make an exception.
I mean, I'm allergic to it, so I probably shouldn't.
Yeah, maybe not. All right.
All right, so we've got a few questions that were asked in the group, so I am taking a look. So, what issues are the strike trying to address? Lots of things, actually. There are public demands from the union. So, the union started the negotiations with a demand for a 40% general wage increase, a full retroactive reinstatement of the pension. So, what does the retroactive mean here? Remember when I said that the pension is frozen?
Before you do that, Ryan Schmidt, can you click on that, on what Ryan said? Yeah, could you please put a comma in that? Thank you. I've always been a fan of slow cooking Nabati. I'm like, oh, really?
Well, I mean, you'd have plenty of time to crawl out of the pot.
Yeah, that's true.
So we have from Aoife in the Discord, we have what issues is the strike trying to address? So again, 40% general wage increase, which sounds like a lot until you remember that here alone, the inflation is 45% in the past 10 years, and they have gotten a percentage or 2%, one or the other, every other year for the past 10 years, locked into a contract they could not negotiate. This is the first time in 16 years that they've been able to negotiate an actual contract with the union negotiating committee and gotten to actually vote on it without the interference of international. So, like, when we're talking about this number, it sounds big because they've basically had their buying power reduced and not kept up with inflation. Remember that what the Boeing workers do is an incredibly dangerous job. It is highly skilled labor. Do you need a degree to do most of it? No, you can get by with the training that you are provided if your trainer's good. But that doesn't mean that they're not building thousands of pounds heavy death machines with extraordinarily specific specifications that they have to assess their own parts to determine whether or not the parts are potentially functional or non-functional or damaged. They have to install every single nut, bolt, etc. that you see on those planes. You know, they use caustic, dangerous chemicals, some of which they're not always given safety gear for. They have to be in the room with a lot of those vapors. There are lots of on the job injuries that happen. There's a lot of alleged mistreatment from management. I've heard some stories from my husband and from other people.
Yeah, but like the thing is, PPE is really expensive, and the C-suite need their $300,000 a month pension. So, like we gotta cut some things here and there, and PPE is not really that important, is it?
Oh, my apology. I didn't actually know who that person was the dead name of. I saw that somebody had mentioned that earlier. So my apologies. Just say Aoife when you see anything from Ryan, because apparently they haven't been able to change their account name on YouTube.
Oh, sorry, Ryan. I apologize. I mean, sorry, Aoife. Sorry, Aoife.
It's hard when you're reading it right there.
Yeah, and you
Hopefully,
just said Eva's dead name. I apologize.
yeah. Ikeda says, why did International sell them out? Quite frankly, I don't know. What I think is the most likely explanation, this is my personal opinion and not backed by anything other than what I know was going on at the time. I think that they were afraid that they would lose mass union membership if one of these right to work states like South Carolina, which by the way, they built a plant down there anyway. And it has had the FAA license stripped several times. If they built these planes in another state, there would be a massive loss of jobs. And sure enough, Boeing promised that they wouldn't do that and then promptly built a plant in South Carolina in a right to work state that has resisted unionization for years now. They're actually actively doing anti-union propagandizing. I mean, education. I mean, that's what they're calling it. Currently down there because they're afraid of, seeing us get really big raises and such. By us, I mean, my partners and such, but to like seeing the folks with IAM up here get really good raises or benefits or things, they're afraid that they're going to see that and then want to unionize. So yeah, basically, my thing was, I think that they were afraid to lose those two planes over the life of those planes, lots of jobs. And they did actually build a plant. They supposedly are still going to build the 777X up here, but it's been delayed by 2 years at this point for certifications because they keep finding safety issues with it. The 787 is nominally built partially up in Everett because they fly a lot of them up here to get them finished because the FAA license keeps getting revoked in South Carolina. So, in fact, a lot of their customers, according to Scuttlebutt from folks that I've talked to on the strike lines, a lot of their customers allegedly refused to take delivery from planes that were built in South Carolina in the Charleston plant. So they would fly them up here, find a ton of stuff wrong with them, redo a whole bunch of things, and then they would fly it out of Everett saying it was built in Everett when the bulk of the labor was down in Charleston.
It's a bit dodgy there, isn't it?
Yeah. So, Hubby says part of the personal protective equipment issue is that people are not trained in what they need, like HEPA filter when grinding cadmium paint. Yeah, training's been a major issue. Because after the 2014 contract, there was what was known as the Great Silver Handshake, where basically Boeing was like, we need to get rid of all these vested pension workers so that there's not anybody else to get pissed at us. So they said, hey, anybody that's close enough to retirement age, I don't remember what the cutoff was, Hubby might remember, we'll give you a silver handshake. You can start drawing your pension right away if you take a voluntary layoff, which normally if you take a voluntary layoff, you can't do that. But they're like, hey, if you retire right now, we'll shake your hand with a pot made of silver and you can start drawing your pension.
Yeah. A lot of people don't consider this. When you lay off a large force of very, very well-trained people, it can take decades for that to recover. Like about 12 years ago, the Newman government in Queensland, where I live, basically got rid of like 12,000 jobs in the healthcare industry, like nurses, doctors, that sort of thing. And we never recovered. We haven't recovered. We're still recovering. And then for some strange reason, the Queenslanders decided to put the Liberal Party back in, which is our equivalent to the Republicans. Anyway, but yeah, like people don't tend to think that just laying off the old guys is gonna affect us. No, it can actually take decades to recover from removal, like mass layoff of very, very experienced people. So yeah,
that's part of what they ran into is a whole bunch of the most experienced people all left kind of at once, and they had to do mass new hiring, which saved them a lot of money, or so they thought. But then, some of the quality issues can be attributed to an inexperienced workforce, but most of them are manufacturing process issues because they also implemented what's called just-in-time manufacturing, which is a kind of manufacturing process where things are shipped to you as a company as they're needed. So today I'm going to install a transmission on this car. It got here yesterday. It's not in a we don't have 50 of them in a warehouse where we're paying warehousing fees. There's 15 cars on our assembly line right now. 12 of them need transmissions. Yesterday 12 transmissions were delivered. And that works fine for a minute until you have supply line disruptions, until, say, a war breaks out or a pandemic sweeps across the nation, or, a whole bunch of experienced workforce die because, a bunch of people got exposed to the pandemic.
Or there's a mass outbreak of Canadian geese, which is possibly the most horrific concept in that entire list that you just gave. So, sorry, I'm trying to lighten the mood.
But yeah, a whole bunch of really angry, really, really angry people, like older retirees, retired all at once, just in mass protest, including at least one person that I know personally. So that's kind of one of the big issues that they're dealing with. So that, like, the pension is one of the biggest issues the strike is trying to address. I can't get too deep into the other demands for the union, like the union members' priorities have been talking about, because it might jeopardize the bargaining position of the union. When they started, they were asking for less costly healthcare, because at present, the last offer that was put out offered them a 35% general wage increase at GWI, which compounded allegedly to 39%. However, one of the issues that the union was demanding that didn't get addressed as a part of that was currently they have a cost of living adjustment built into their contract, but the formula is based off of the national average, which, if any of you live in southern states or in certain sections of the East Coast or out in the boondocks, you'll know that the national average is nothing like what it's like in, metropolitan areas, which is where all the Boeing factories are. So basically, if our cost of living is 50 to 100% above the national average, but the cost of living adjustments are based off of a national formula. So that is one of the things they wanted to address. The last offer did not address that. They wanted retroactive reinstatement of the pension. I was starting to get into that. Retroactive means they froze the pension. They did not purge the pension fund. Because remember, we've got salaries still drawing out of it. There are also people who are vested before this vote happens. They're drawing out of it. And everyone who was vested before this vote happens just had their time frozen. So when my husband retires, he can still draw a very measly pension. But all of the years of service after 2014 don't count anymore. Like, it's just the years of service before 2014. So basically, what retroactive reinstatement that they want means is people who have served since 2014, they want those years of service and seniority to count for pension vesting.
Yeah, that's fair.
So that means even for new hires, like if somebody's only worked there for 2 years, they should get 2 years of pension. For somebody who's worked there since before 2014, say you got hired in 2010, you should get 16 years instead of just 4.
Yeah. So what happens if somebody works for, like, let's say this happens and somebody's worked for Boeing for like 4 years and they go off and get another job? Do they still get the $40 a month for whatever it was?
It's like 95, I think, per year in the current contract. The last offer bumped that up to 105, which is a measly $10 a year, but it did not retroactively reinstate the pensions, which is part of the reason why it got rejected so badly. Pensions are at the heart of this for so many people. I don't think I've talked to more than maybe one person on the strike lines who didn't say that they voted no because they were pissed that the pension wasn't coming back.
Yeah. No. So, but like, let's say somebody prior to 2014 worked for 3 or 4 years and do they still get the pension even if they're not working with Boeing?
If they don't retire from Boeing, I don't know if they do. I'm pretty sure you have to specifically retire from Boeing in order to get it. I might be misspeaking there because that's not a part of this particular debate that I've studied deeply into.
Okay.
But my assumption is that usually pensions are a reward for loyalty. So usually you have to retire from the company directly in order to get them if you have them vested.
Fair enough.
Yeah. So that's one of the biggest issues. The 40% GWI that they were demanding, this compounded to 39%, but a lot of people are like, no, it's 35%. We're asking for 40. That's not enough. So that's one of the other things that the union started with demanding. They were only able to get Boeing to move down 1% on the cost share for the healthcare with the last contract offer that that they were hyping so much. So what the cost share means is that Boeing in the contract was allowed to hike your expenses for your healthcare up to 10% to be in line with national average, but the total population of Boeing that is on this plan are not allowed to pay more than the original contract from 2008 said 16% of total healthcare costs. And if the population, if adjustments that Boeing makes to the costs, increases or whatever, end up with the population paying more than 16%, then they have to fix that the following year. They brought that down to 15% from 16%.
Yeah.
So that I know that that's really confusing because health insurance is confusing, but basically it means that out of pocket, you shouldn't have to pay more than 15% of your healthcare costs with their plan, which is not great because for a long time they had zero cost healthcare.
Yeah.
Like zero cost health insurance through the company. So it's still a takeaway, but it's slightly better than the last takeaway, basically, is the opinion of a lot of people. It's movement forward, but it's not great. Another big issue that the union was trying to address, that I've seen a lot of people talk about is progression. Progression is a pain in the butt. So basically what progression is there's very high max pay. It's not as high as it used to be. It used to be triple minimum wage, is closer to double minimum wage for most pay grades now. That basically anybody who's ever worked for a union, a lot of the time you have what's called pay progression, where you either get paid per your hours worked or for the amount of time that you have worked. Boeing's is not per hours, it's actually per time. The union that I was a part of, it was per hours. So when you worked X number of 100 hours, you got a pay increase up until a big jump at the end where you get to max pay. And then you kind of stay there, and any wage increases you get are because of contract negotiations or cost of living increases. The pay progression takes 6 years at present, and every 6 months you get 50 cents. According to people in several groups, that hasn't changed since 1980.
Jesus Christ.
So every 6 months, not hours worked, every 6 months, you get 50 cents raise until you hit max pay at 6 years. And then you get a massive wage bump. So a lot of people want that reduced. There are lots of numbers flying around for what they want it reduced to, but a lot of people want better pay progression increases, and they want reduced time to max pay. Because right now, like minimum wage in my state is over $15 an hour, or it is $15 an hour. And a lot of new hires at Boeing got hired in at $20 an hour, which is what McDonald's is hiring for in my state right now. So people who are building aircraft are getting paid the same as burger flippers. So when you are talking like, which, I'm not going to diss on fast food, right? But like there is a reason why somebody building an airplane should probably be paid more than somebody who is at a transitional job like fast food. Right?
Yeah,
like there is a massive skills difference between the two. It is not that it is, harsher labor or something like that. I'm not disparaging fast food workers. Everybody should get paid a living wage, but there is like a massive difference in the amount of skills, training, and experience you need to build an aircraft versus to learn burgers and operate some fryers.
Yeah, if you screw up a hamburger, you just get an angry customer. Maybe someone might
some food poisoning.
Yeah, you screw up an airplane, 250 people die.
Yeah. And that's where, when you guys are thinking about this, so when you're talking about striking Boeing workers, people are talking about people making in the hundreds of thousands. Most Boeing workers, here's a really depressing statistic. Only 25% of Boeing's workforce at present has worked there more than 5 years. That is how bad the talent drain is.
Christ. That's for me, that's the most horrific thing, because what I was saying earlier about getting rid of the most experienced people has a massive flow-on effect. People that will kill people. Like, I'm not over exaggerating. Not having that experience will end up killing people. Oh, that's horrifying. Guys, don't fly a Boeing airplane. just don't do it. Oh God. Sorry, but yeah. Sorry, I just overreacting just then, but yeah, that.
Okay, so hubby answered the question. He says, if you are fired, you don't get the pension. If you quit without retirement, you lose the benefits. So yeah, if you don't retire from Boeing, if you just quit from Boeing, you do not get your 4 years. You'd have to retire from Boeing. So again, like that is, it's a reward for loyalty, which is part of the reason why Boeing has such bad turnover right now, because it still is technically one of the better jobs in like the state that you can do without a college degree, but only barely. It's, starting wages are terrible, and you've really got to have the patience to basically, destroy your body for 6 years to get up to those higher pay scales and turn it into a career. A lot of people I've heard have been, working at Boeing for a little while to get the college benefits, go get a degree, and then they work somewhere else.
Yeah.
Like it's becoming a lot of turnover, and that's where you get part of that. Part of that was the silver handshake that we talked about, but part of that depressing 25% over 5 year statistic, quite frankly, is that without a pension or other sort of long-term rewards for people who have worked there for a really long time, it's a lot more mercenary. It's just another job, which is not what you need when you are building gigantic death machines that can kill people if they fall out of the sky.
Yeah.
Like when you're talking about why do these workers deserve competitive pay packages? Because the work that they do is deadly to them. There are a lot of workplace injuries. Industrial deafness is a major issue. Like people lose their hearing because of the loud noises in the factory. People are exposed to caustic chemicals, including MPK. Go look up how nasty that stuff is. MPK. That stuff is nasty, and they use it all the time. Like there's cadmium in the paints that you might get exposed to if you're on the paint lines. There's a ton of highly specialized labor that even though you can do it with just like without a college degree, a lot of it without a college degree, like it is still brutal, backbreaking work. And on top of it, before the latest contract offer, which again got rejected, so we don't know what's going to be on the next one, they could designate you up to 3 weekends in a row to force you to work 7 days, like a weekend overtime, Saturday or Sunday or both. The latest contract offer reduced that to only 1 in a row, meaning that if you volunteered or if you were designated, they couldn't force you to, and they can't tell you can't work overtime unless you've worked 3 weekends in a row. So the latest contract offer changed that. That was a win that the union got in that contract. It got rejected. We don't know if it's still going to be on the next one. But that was one of the changes that they're trying to go for, is so many weekends get designated. And people who are in my server know all about that, because designated overtime has stopped our Pathfinder game from happening several times because both my partners are in it.
So is it methylpropyl ketone? MPK?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, it says here, MPK can refer to both mitogen-activated protein kinase or methylpropyl ketone. So,
it's methylpropyl ketone.
Methylpropyl ketone. Just having a look. I'm just having a quick look. Oh God. I've got the NIH. I'm just having a look.
When working with MPK, you should use ventilation, local exhaust, or breathing protection. Wear protective gloves and clothing. Wear safety goggles or eye protection. Rinse skin with plenty of water or shower if contaminated. Rinse mouth if you inhale MPK vapors. Do not drink, eat, or smoke while working with MPK.
It's a highly flammable liquid and vapor. I'm just looking at the MSDS, which is
a paint remover. It's a bonding agent remover. It's a solvents for varnishes and lacquers. It's particularly used on metals. They use it a lot on the plane to remove coatings and stuff that are on various parts. But it is so it permeates the atmosphere so much that within the first couple of weeks, people were cracking jokes about getting withdrawals from it because it smells like it all the time. Ikeda with the ridiculous $100 super chat. Jesus Christ, what the God damn it, Ikeda.
Damn it, Akeda.
I hope talking about it has made you feel better. I look forward to the game on Sunday. This wasn't about me feeling better, actually. This was about, I got a bunch of DMs asking me to talk about this, like to reawaken the slumbering giant that is my channel and talk about it. And I roped Nervardi into it literally this morning. I'm like, look, I'm giving you no notice whatsoever. I'm getting nagged by everybody. I've gotten the courage to do it. I've got to go back to my job tomorrow and like work my entire ass off. Do you want to come join me tonight? And she was like, hell yes.
Yes,
So
I've got
we met
nothing
for an
else to
hour
do.
before the show.
I've got nothing else to do. I'm off work until the 4th of November, so because of my broken calf muscle. So yeah, why not? Yeah. So
Yeah, and I agree that the college degree is not the end all be all of education, but like when I have heard so many people in so many different contexts go off on, well, they're unskilled labor, they're uneducated workers, they're this, they're that. No, they're highly skilled, highly trained workers that need years and years and years of training. Like one of my partners is currently learning how to do very complicated wiring that relates to the landing gear right now. One of them has to run wires down the entire length of the plane without crossing them or twisting them, and has to do this over and over and over every day. These are extraordinarily complex machines. The managers typically expect you to be trained in multiple different areas and will move people around to get them trained in various areas constantly, so you can never quite get used to a single job. Like, it is ridiculous. Like, it is incredibly difficult. They sacrifice their bodies. A lot of them sacrifice a lot of time. And, you know, that's another thing that people are talking about. One of the things the union said that they wanted in their initial sort of outburst to the press was better vacation and sick leave. My state requires 40 hours of sick leave to be paid based off of the hours that you work in a formula. Like, that is a state regulation. So they get that. Plus, they get 80 hours of vacation. After they've worked there for at least 15 years. You actually get considerably less than that. I believe for the first 5 years, it's something like 30 or 40, but don't quote me on that. According to folks in several groups, I was asked to specifically point out that many of the other salaried workers and the non-union workers get closer to 160 days of paid time off, which can be used for vacation or sick leave. So like it's flex time is what they call it. So people want, and they get that much, much earlier than the IAM workers do.
Is the union also going to be asking for specialization
hours? Otsugo hours.
No, I meant roles. So rather than having one person do 8 or 9 different roles, like what you were saying earlier, are they talking about one person will only do like 1 or 2 roles, like, you know, wiring?
No. So the way that it works is each of the pay grades has a number of jobs that the pay grade handles. So like so let's talk about grade 4. Grade 4 handles everything from installation of what the J box or junction box under the landing gear to the wiring that goes down to the down the length of the plane. Hubby can expand more on it. I'm going to wait until he pops some more in there. But like basically these different pay grades can do different jobs on each of the planes. So you can't do anything outside your pay grades, and the managers aren't allowed to touch the planes at all. They're not allowed to work on them. Except, say, during a strike. They're working on them right now, and there's not a lot of them, and nothing's getting done.
All right. Yeah, that's good. That's good.
But, like, during the contract, managers aren't allowed to touch the plane. Team leads are, but team leads are not managers. Team leads are union employees, and team leads only get, like, $1 or $2 extra, despite the fact that they've been doing a lot of the work of managers, which is another thing I was asked to bring up. Team leads want better pay. My husband actually gets put on temporary team lead a lot, and the pay bump does not justify all the extra work he has to do or all the extra responsibility they put on him.
Yeah,
so that's another thing that the union has been talking about wanting to address. Let's talk a little bit about how seniority works. So pay progression. Remember when I said pay progression is about the number of years that you've worked? Well, let's say you switch job codes. Under the current contract, not the latest offer, but the current contract that just expired in September, let's say you're grade 4 and you've worked here for 2 years, but you really want to become a QA. You want to move up to, I think it's grade 5. Don't quote me on that. I think painting is like grade 8. So like, let's say you got some extra training. You went and got your A&P license, which is one of the licenses you can get to become an airplane mechanic. You get that license, or you want to move up to a higher pay grade. You want to become a QA. You go in a quality assurance rep. You go through all the training to become a QA. You move up to grade 5. Under the current contract, you lose all your pay progression and start at the beginning. You also lose all your seniority. The only thing you get is what's called bump back rights, which means that if they do a layoff in your job code, you get bumped back to your old job code with 0 seniority and no bump back rights. But if they're also doing layoffs in your old job code, you might get laid off anyway. So under the latest offer, the union negotiated that pay progression would stay the same. So those 50-cent raises, you'd bump up to whatever the pay progression would be for the starting pay of your new pay grade. But I didn't see any difference in seniority. So you still lose your seniority and just get the bump back rights. And then, of course, if the layoff's affecting the other job code that you got bumped back to, you're SOL.
So there's no incentive to progress through the company then.
Well, if you're at the very beginning of your career, there might be, but like later on in your career, it becomes a bigger and bigger risk because, like, let's say you've got over 10 years of seniority, so you're very unlikely to get hit by a layoff. Then at that point, if you want to become a QA, but you know that there's a contract negotiation coming up and there's almost always layoffs after contract negotiations, you might not go and become a QA. And even though you've got 10, 15 years of experience, it might want to be like, you might be one of the best, most qualified QAs like that there could possibly be. And you'd be a shoo-in for that. And you've got that attention to detail. It might just be less risky to stay as somebody who's doing the wiring because you've got 10 years experience and 10 years of seniority, which means that you are far less likely to get laid off in 3 years when the contract's up.
Wow. That's insane. Like, this is one of the things that I just don't understand about C-suites is that people are the thing that makes the company make money, not the shares, nothing like that. It's the actual people working, and it having people that have it just doesn't make any sense. Like, it to them, obviously it does, but it really does not make any sense whatsoever.
So when we're on the topic of other things that like, there was a question in the chat that mentioned okay, so what other sorts of grievances do the workers have? Now, there are some good managers I've heard from some folks, but there's a lot of managerial training that allegedly occurs. Again, this is me repeating stories I've heard. This is third-hand information that I've heard, strike lines from other people. But I was asked to mention that sometimes managers will retaliate against workers that get put on light duty, including one person who allegedly overheard a manager say that if you're not on light duty, why are you here? Or if you're on light duty and you can't do all the job, why are you here? There is at least one person that I've spoken to who got a surgery done on their, I think it was somewhere in their spine, and they were on light duty recovering from that surgery. And I believe it was a work-related injury. And as soon as they got off of that work-related injury, off of light duty, they had been reporting safety issues and issues with certain jobs not being done to spec to upper management to try and get those issues fixed on the line they were on. Their manager put them in the plane underbelly where they would have to crane and arch their back in order to access where they needed to work immediately as soon as they were taken off of light duty restrictions. So when people talk about the safety culture at Boeing, there are some things, and technically it was well within the manager's rights to do, because technically this person was off of light duty restrictions. So thereby the manager, because it was within their pay grade, was allowed to do that. So there was no way to prove that it was retaliatory.
Yeah. That's insane.
So I'm not saying every manager does this, but it is one of the stories that I've heard from people who have talked about this. There are stories that I've heard of managers telling people that they're allowed to leave the building like when they don't have anything to do, and were encouraged to do so, and then gave them what's called a CAM, or a corrective action memo, shortly afterwards. And when the person was like, why'd you tell me that I could leave and then CAM me? That's how you play the game. So I've heard stories like that. Yeah. So that's one of the, like, those are a couple of the stories. So that's some of the grievances. Another thing that I was asked to talk about in one of the groups was site maintenance and equipment services have been gutted. Everett alone used to have hundreds of equipment and maintenance workers, everything from electrician, equipment maintenance, building maintenance. The majority of that was union before. It has been off-sourced to third-party vendors, including the security guards used to be union, and they offshored the security to a company called Davis Security, I believe, or is it Davis Security? Or no, Davis Door, sorry. There's it's like J something security. So the security guards all used to be Boeing union, and security has been basically contracted out to third-party contractors. They tried to do the same thing with janitorial. Janitorial hasn't gotten a proper raise in a really long time. The last contract gave them a very small one, but they didn't get the GWI, the general wage increases that everybody else does. They just got a 12% raise, and they didn't get the other ones for the rest of the years. So that's another thing. People wanted me to talk about how the press isn't talking about how that 35% increase, that's not all at once. What that was 12% upon ratification of the contract, then 6% the next year, then 6% the next year, then 7% the following year. So that's only if you work for the next 4 years do you get the full compounded 39% wage increase, or 35%.
Insane. And if someone gets brought on, halfway through or something like that, do they get the wages, or do they have to work up?
They will get the wage increases based off of where they are in their progression. However, another thing that I was asked to bring up that the media is not covering about the latest contract offer, because they've been made it out like it's this huge sweet deal, right? Is that people that are on a leave of absence, medical or otherwise, right now, that is more than 30 days, don't get the signing bonus. And there's language that suggests they might not get the general wage increase.
Right.
Now, I don't know if that's 100% true for the general wage increase, but it is definitively true for the signing bonus, because, like, hubby asked the union, and that's what the union told us. There is similar language for the general wage increases. So somebody who's on a leave of absence right now when this contract is ratified might not get it, but a new hire would. New hires will get the same pay rates that the union has negotiated.
Okay. Well, at least they're not screwing over the new hires yet.
Oh, no, they are still screwing over the new hires. Remember what I said. If you get hired at, say, $21 an hour right now, you get 50 cents every 6 months until you hit 6 years.
Yeah, that's true.
So you'd be making $21.50 6 months from now, then $22 next year. Now you're going to get those 12% wage increases, but that's based off of your current pay.
Right.
So you'll get the 12% on that 21. You'll get, so whatever 12% of 21 is, let's just call it 10% to make the math easy for a second. So you'll get, 23.10, and then you'll get the 6% on top of that with your 50-cent like raises. The GWI really helps, honestly, the max pay people considerably more. The new hires do not get better progression out of this. They are still stuck with these 50-cent wage increases per year, and that percentage, I don't know if that actually takes into account the 50-cent raise you would get if it happens after or before. So they might even get those 50-cent raises taken out of that percentage. I'm not absolutely certain, but it's possible. I'd have to actually ask the union about math.
Yeah. So 12% of 21 is 23.52.
Okay, but remember, you got 50-cent wage increases twice. So you get the 12% of the 21, and then you get a 50-cent wage increase 6 months from now, and another 50-cent wage increase, and you'll either get 6% wage increase on top of that total, or you'll get a 6% wage increase minus the 50 cents. I don't know which one it is.
Right. So either way,
so yeah, when you're seeing how quote unquote good of a deal this is,
it's not really.
It's not that great of a deal, actually.
Yeah, because what's inflation now?
What is I think it's 8% right now, but let me check.
So you get less than inflation, essentially.
Let's see. Okay, the inflation rate is 2.4% nationwide across the country. Let me check what the inflation rate in my state is. Inflation rate in Washington State is 6%.
Okay, so it's keeping,
and it was 9% from 2021 to 2022.
Right. So they're getting pay cuts.
More like they're barely covering inflation.
And then the cost of living that's going up, that's not got anything to do with inflation, like groceries, petrol prices.
Let's see. Washington is the 8th most expensive place for household bills in the country at an average of $2,468 per month. That's a pipe dream. If you have a 2-bedroom apartment, that's your rent.
Yeah.
Like, because like the average monthly mortgage is $1,854, but like that's because most of us bought our houses 10 years ago. Right? If you bought a house right now, your mortgage would be over $2,000 a month.
But the C-suite guy needs $300,000 a month. How can he afford to live?
It says that to have a comfortable life up here, you need to make about $84,000 a year.
How much Boeing workers on average making?
Let's see. Average. Well, remember, remember, 75% of the workforce has not hit that 6-year mark yet. 75% of the workforce are not making max pay.
Okay. So, yeah.
Let's see what the average. Okay, so. I'm trying to figure it out.
So what's
average wages? I am Boeing machinist, because we're looking specifically at the machinist, not average wages at Boeing, because the salary workers make a lot more. Average salary for a Boeing machinist is between $40,000 to $90,000 a year.
And you said
so most of them are making.
You said it was 87,000 to live comfortably in your
84
state,
to 86,000 to live comfortably in your state and to get an apartment and to make like triple what your rent is.
Wow.
So the average Boeing worker is living in poverty by the standards of my state.
But the C-suite needs $300,000 a month in pension.
Yeah, they can buy a house every other month, because like a house about the size of mine would cost about $600,000 right now. We bought our house 10 years ago for about $215,000, by the way.
Yeah, I'm just trying to
and like we're lucky, and it was because he worked a good union job that we could even afford the house. Like I worked at Verizon back then, and hubby still worked at Boeing, and we made it fucking work until he got his max pay. But like, to give you guys an idea, the majority of these Boeing workers are not making $100,000 a year, $90,000 a year. The majority of these Boeing workers are making $40,000 to $60,000, $80,000 a year, depending on their pay grade. The majority of Boeing workers got hired on at about the same wages you'd pay at McDonald's. Like Dick's Drive-In, which is a local place that people love here, they pay better starting wages and give better raises after training than Boeing does.
So I just put in 300,000 divided by 43680, because that's a number I came up with a bit later, like from $21 an hour. That's 6.86. So this person in a month can pay for almost 7 people's yearly wage.
The average worker, yeah, because remember, only 25% of Boeing workers are at max pay right now. And actually, that's 25% of Boeing workers have worked there more than 5 years. That's not 25%, because remember what I said about losing your pay progression and seniority under their old contract. So 25% have worked there more than 5 years. Probably more than that are not at max pay, because some of them might have changed job codes.
Yeah.
So we can't even assume that everybody who worked there for 6 years is at max pay, because some of them might have swapped job codes.
So yeah. So gosh. Just almost 7 people, entire yearly wage. This guy is getting as a pension.
Per month.
Like,
per month.
God. Per month.
Per month.
Per month.
That's not 300,000 a year. That's 300,000 a month. Like 300,000 a year would still be freaking ridiculous, but like this is per month. The pension that they are trying to fight for a 30-year worker, I believe it caps at 30 years. Don't quote me on that, but I believe it caps at 30 years. A 30-year worker would get under their last contract offer 105 times 30. Let's see.
So 6.8 times 12. 6.8 times 12 is 81.6.
So let's talk about.
So I was just saying, it's essentially this guy's pension is paying for the entire, like this guy's singular years of pension is paying 81.6 people's the minimum wage for 81.6 people.
So Yeats says 3150. So 3150 a month. What's that times 12 months?
3150. 3150 times 12. 37,800.
So yeah, $37,800 a month. That is or a year. That is how much a year the Boeing workers are currently fighting for. That is how much that a 30-year worker who had 30 years before they retired would have gotten under the last one. But remember, the last contract did not retroactively instate that. So most workers would not be getting that much. Most workers would be getting closer to like 1,000 because most of the people who could have gotten that much took the silver handshake. So let's go ahead and take that number and figure out how much his yearly pension, how many workers his yearly pension alone would pay. Because this isn't the CEO that got this. This is a different worker this is a different C-suite worker who retired.
So I said it was $3.6 million. Get rid of that point. 3.6 million. And what was it? What did I say? Divided by 37,800. 37,800. 95.24.
So 95 and a quarter of workers. So 95 workers plus one guy who only worked for 7.5 years could get their pensions just off of this one guy's pension.
Yep. And like, let's ignore this guy's. We're just talking about his pension. We're not talking about stocks. We're not talking about anything like that, which you could very easily live off. Like, he could very easily live off that. Like, so yes, slow roast is a great one. Apparently, you wanted to eat me. Yeah. Also, never trust my mathematics. But I'm pretty sure I'm able to do that minor amount. But yeah, 95.24. So shit.
So like, just talking even a little bit about some of the things that these workers are having to deal with, like, no freaking wonder it was a 96% vote to strike and 93% or 94% vote to reject that offer. The original offer was only a 25% wage increase over 4 years. 12 up front, 5, 5, and 7. Or 10 up front, 5, 5, and 7.
Something like that.
Or 5, 5, and 6. It was 20 up front and 5, 5, and
something.
5. I don't remember. Math, I'm bad at math. But it was a 25% wage increase. The last offer upped it by 10%. They also tried to add language to the contract that would require workers to call in before their shift, even if they're using vacation or sick leave to cover their absence. That's the way it is at most jobs, right? Why is this a problem? Remember that car accident that I mentioned? My husband had dizzy spells so bad he couldn't even stand following that. We had to get him to the ER and get him looked at. And, you know, he already had a concussion, but there wasn't much they could do by the time we had him looked at. He didn't realize that the dizzy spells weren't normal. He wasn't able to call his manager until almost at the end of shifts. Their current language states before the end of shift or as soon as possible. And the reason for that, under their old crappier contract, the reason for that is protecting people from things like car accidents. Like, I'm not talking about just traffic. I'm talking about car accidents. I'm talking about injury. I'm talking about sudden illness. I'm talking about heart attacks. I'm talking about, like, our cat had a seizure. We had to bring her in. Like, the current contract protected him. They got that removed off the last contract offer, but they might try to sneak it back in.
So, it's sort of sometimes you just can't call in because one, you forgot, like, or you drive, as you said, driving to work, and the next thing you know, you've been T-boned, and and was your kitty okay?
Luna was okay. She's mildly diabetic and keeps going back and forth between her diabetes being seemingly in remission and then having spikes of blood sugar because she gets into stuff. The seizure was because the previous vet we had did not inform us that we had options for checking her blood sugar at home and insisted we bring her in to get her blood sugar checked by them. We switched her to a new vet and got her better treatment, and she's doing a lot better. She's very old. I have had her my entire adult life. And she was an adult when I got her, so she is over 14 years old at this point. So she is getting older. She's probably like in my husband's lap at the moment because she can't be in mine because I'm at my work computer and not my gaming computer. But yeah. But the thing that I'm trying to get at with the strike is a lot of people are like, oh, the Boeing workers are so selfish and it's causing all the suppliers to suffer. No, Boeing is causing the suppliers to suffer. They gave their CEO a 45% wage increase after a 42% wage increase when he tanked the company, tanked the stock, and caused multiple crashes on his watch, when he encouraged a safety culture in which we now have whistleblowers coming out talking about how parts were taken out of the out of commission segment and installed on planes, where the door plug went blowing off, which, by the way, was Spirit Aerosystems. That was something I forgot to cover earlier. Spirit Aerosystems used to be the fuselage manufacturing branch at Boeing, but that Jack Welch ideology, the CEO split it off into its own company. With that bottom 10% of the company purge ideology. And that the quality assurance issues at Spirit Aerosystems were part of what led to that door plug fiasco, because it was supposed to be installed by them, and Boeing had the certification saying it was installed by them, so nobody checked at that point. They've tried to reduce the number of QAs several times because they have the ideology of, well, anybody who's not touching the plane isn't making us money. So when you're talking about these issues, they are recent in that sense that they've been since the McDonnell-Douglas merger, about the past 20 years or so. But they've been ongoing in the sense that that's 20 years. And only 25% of the workers have worked there for longer than 5.
Yeah. It's one of those things. It's sort of like, what's the saying? If you don't plan to fail, you're planning to fail. And that's what quality QA is. That's what, that sort of thing is. If you're not going to put money onto quality, you are going to end up spending a lot more money in the future. And often when it comes to something like Boeing, it's going to be people's lives.
Regulations are written in blood, people. A lot of people don't like OSHA, but there's a reason OSHA exists.
Yes, and there's a reason.
So what are the acceptable outcomes? What are the unacceptable outcomes? I can't speak to that. I don't want to jeopardize the union or unduly influence people's votes. I know that, like, my partners have told me that they are not going to vote for any contract that does not include a reinstatement of the pension. They're not going to vote yes for any so when I say vote for, I don't mean showing up to the vote. I mean voting yes on. So I know that for them and for a lot of folks that I met on the lines, the pension is a massive sticking point. Boeing has said it's not on the table. We're at day 45 and they're losing billions of dollars a day. They just had to sell $19 billion in more stock in order to get more liquidity. That's new plane development numbers, but they're also talking about cutting 10% of their workforce, and we don't yet know what percentage of that might be union workers. We know that the majority of it, according to the CEO, is going to come from the top, but the CEO is new. So Ryan Ortberg is new. He is not one of the C-suite that was in charge, but he hasn't fired everybody who was. So basically, we don't know how much BS is going to come out of this. We do know that the second contract offer that Boeing gave, like after the first one, so first one's the 25%, that was the 94% screw no. The second contract offer that Boeing quote unquote gave was a non-negotiated 5% increase to the GWI. So 30% wage increase over 4 years. It included all the other stuff that I said was not great. Got rid of a contribution to a union pension or a union 401k that was managed by the union and replaced it with reinstating the AMPP bonus that they had taken away in the first offering. They presented that to the media at the same time that they gave it to the union without meeting the union at the negotiating table to discuss it. So they illegally tried to directly bargain, emailed out this offer to the employees and to the media at the same time they gave it to the union, did not give the negotiating committee a chance to talk about it. So the union didn't even put that one up for a vote. So the 35% that I was talking about earlier, that's the first actual negotiated offer that we've had since we've been on strike, and it was turned down.
And like the irony is that the company is losing so much money. If they had just kind of sat down with the union and accepted the union's terms of agreement, they probably wouldn't be like even the amount of money that they have lost just by screwing around the unions. Probably they would have saved that money anyway. Like, you know, having to sell.
Well, they would have saved that. They would have saved that money in training costs alone. And multiple aviation industry experts have talked about this. Right?
Yeah,
like
it is.
The amount of money they are having to pay in training overhead alone, because you can't have a company like this treat workers like a revolving door. These are highly skilled, highly trained workers who are putting their livelihoods and their bodies on the line for this job.
Yeah.
You can't afford to have people treat it like it's a job at McDonald's or a grocery store. Hell, our grocery stores are unionized out here, most of them. So you can't even say or like a grocery store because grocery store workers are unionized here.
Yeah. So it's like one of the most expensive things is to get a new person in. Even if they're highly skilled from 10, 15 years at this particular company that's similar to the one that you have now, you still got to train them because anyway, it doesn't make any sense. Look after you look after your workers. Your workers make loyal to you, and then you don't have to worry about training someone up constantly. They're always in training. It's like, it just makes no sense. It's damn you, Jack Welch. Damn you.
Okay, so another question is, how can we help if we aren't connected to Boeing or workers at Boeing? So if you're in the Pacific Northwest, you can donate firewood or food to the union headquarters. Some small businesses have been donating things like pizza. I don't know if non-union members are allowed to donate to the hardship fund. I'm assuming that they can, but on the IAM 751 website, there's a link to a hardship fund that's being used to help people in dire straits with things like medical bills, because that's another thing Boeing did. They cut off our health insurance at the end of September.
That was nice of them.
Yeah, and they very friendly reminded everybody, if you cross the line, we'll give it back. If you're a scab, we'll give it back.
Oh, that's nice of them too.
I'm not encouraging anybody to scab, by the way.
Do not scab.
Do not scab. Don't cross the line.
Do not scab.
So I did answer Frog's question, what has Boeing been up to that led to this? We talked a lot about that and the general background history. Let's see. Giving Boeing's recent reputation, is anybody especially concerned? Okay, so Boeing is the biggest export in the United States right now that is not garbage. Like literal actual garbage. We export a ton of garbage to other countries. I don't mean garbage as in poorly manufactured products. I mean stuff that goes in a landfill. Apart from garbage, Boeing is the #1 international export. They are a massive, massive company that is in an industry that is extraordinarily hard to break into. Could Airbus end up getting a big leg up on them, and are potentially the eventual Chinese manufacturers, because China is starting to get into the global aerospace industry, are those potentially a future threat? Maybe further on down the line. But Boeing is still in a position where they can actually course correct. Like they are still in a position where they could build new planes in-house, wow the crap out of their airline customers, and start to build their reputation back up. Is a bankruptcy on the horizon? Probably not. They just sold $19 billion in new shares and opened up the $10 billion equivalent of a company credit card. They have not had their credit rating downgraded yet. They got kicked off the Dow Jones a couple years ago because of all their problems, but they are not at the point where we are looking at bankruptcy yet. So all these people that are like, oh God, Boeing's going to go bankrupt. The company has no money. They have done over $40 billion in the past 10 years of stock buybacks. The company is holding a huge percentage of its own stock, specifically to keep inflating the stock price. The stock price was artificially inflated. It is starting to even out now. It's going to keep tanking as long as the strike is going on because they are hemorrhaging money and will keep hemorrhaging money until they give an offer that the workers are willing to accept. And to be entirely honest, I can't tell you what that's going to be. I can't tell you what the acceptable outcome for all of the workers is going to be because A, I'm not a union rep. B, I'm not reading the results of the surveys the union set out. We don't get access to that information. Only they do. Yeah. And C, I can only speak for the people that I've met and the people that I know. And what I have heard is the number one issue over and over is the pension. And that is very public knowledge. It is extraordinarily public knowledge. There are some people who disagree with that. There are some people who think 401ks are better. I disagree with them. I've seen people have to go back to work because their 401ks tanked in a week. Right? Yeah. Like, it is not stable retirement security. You can pass the 401k or a Roth IRA to your kids, which you can't do for a pension. But pensions are far more stable over the course of your life. And quite frankly, most of us, meaning workers generally in the entire world, can't save up enough in a 401k over the course of our entire lives to live at even a 60% standard of living compared to our expenses while we're working. There's a lot of people who are afraid they'll never retire at all. Pensions are a necessity just because there's like Gen X is about to retire and people are terrified that most of them won't be able to because they were the first generation to like deal with the loss of pensions.
Yeah. Just remember that millennials are the first generation in human history to be poorer than their parents. Just remember that. This is not going to finish anytime soon. There's just no intergenerational wealth anymore.
So yeah. I hope that this, and I hope that this, I hope that this gives you guys some more information because I've heard that a lot of you were like, we don't actually know all that much. The media is being confusing. There's a lot of stuff saying that Boeing workers are being greedy. A lot of people are being aggressive about it. It's a huge, 40% sounds great until you realize they haven't negotiated a contract in 16 years. But here is my last message to you. And this is something that I want you all to consider. And it's something that's not said often enough. Unions set the standard in the industry for every other job. 40-hour work weeks, that was a union win. Ending child labor was a union win. OSHA and regulations like it, the majority of them were union wins. Weekends off were a union win. Vacation, sick leave, paid vacation and sick leave were union wins. A lot of what you take for granted, overtime pay was a union win. A lot of the things that you take for granted, like basic workers' rights, were fought for in literal blood by union workers who got physically busted by the Pinkertons, shot, killed, beaten, holding their strike lines and picketing.
Yeah.
And even the Boeing workers that are on strike right now have had their fair share of fearful incidents. We were there when somebody, like, I don't know if they were a vagrant or if they were just somebody who was pissed off at the union, burned down one of the gates when it was unmanned. Like, they lit a whole bunch of signs on fire. I told Mero about that the night it happened because we had to wait for the strike captain to come out and help clean it up. People have had fireworks thrown at them on the strike lines. A Boeing security guard who later got fired pulled a gun on some of the picketers. People have been screamed at on picket lines. The union doesn't want people out there by themselves on gates because sometimes they get harassed. Like, there's one guy who apparently, according to people in various areas, has driven his car and attempted to run over protesters, onto the sidewalk. So, like, there is still violence going on. Now, this isn't necessarily company violence. I'm not accusing Boeing of that. But I am saying that there is still anti-union sentiment, even in a state as blue as mine.
Yeah. So it's one of those things that you have to try and remember is that people don't like protesters, but protesting is what makes things happen. So the same with protesting. A lot of the things that have happened to improve our lives happened because people were annoying. Be annoying. If you want something to change, be annoying. And so that includes joining a union. That includes going and protesting. And so don't just try to remember that all those people who are going on about how protesters should protest in this way, they shouldn't do this, they shouldn't do that, and what about this and that and whatever. You got to remember that that's just a talking point to make people dislike protesters. The whole point of protesting, the whole point of being in a union is to be bloody annoying,
to be disruptive. And like all of these suppliers that are running into issues, that is Boeing's choice. That is not the choice of the union workers. Boeing is the one that has only allegedly met with the union, 3-4 times at the actual bargaining table. And the last offer was negotiated partially through Julie Su, the labor secretary. They have still not set a date to come back to the bargaining table after this vote was rejected. Their public statement was, "We are disappointed in the results of the vote." That is all they said.
Yeah. So,
and they are currently in a position where the company was already operating at a loss for several years. They're in a position where they're under investigation. There's consideration about whether or not they can be charged with crimes against the United States government for the lies that they told to the FAA. Right? The company is on the back foot. Public sentiment is against them. But you're going to see more and more bots, which I don't know if Boeing's paying for them or someone else who doesn't want the union to get a good contract, because remember, unions set the standard. So they don't want Boeing to get a good contract. There are other companies that want to see this union fail, because look what happened with the striking longshoremen. They got a 62% increase and they're still at the bargaining table. That was just to stay the strike for 3 months until after the presidential election. They're not even done yet. Yeah. They got a 62%. That bolstered a lot of resolve to get a better general wage increase. There are some freaking IBM just reinstated their pensions.
Yeah.
So we are in a position where skilled workers are in demand, especially after the pandemic killed so much generational knowledge. We're in a position where it is harder than ever to get a job, and it is harder than ever to fill positions. And companies like Boeing are going to have to realize that.
Yeah. And also, just to pivot to politics, I hope you don't mind. Project 2025 is going to stop this. If Trump makes it in, and Project 2025 is going to make things.
Yeah, they don't even. Okay, Project 2025 wants to get rid of overtime pay, guys. That's bad. Yeah. Go watch our previous 2 streams on that. If you want to know more about that.
Yeah. So even if you're thinking maybe should I go for the Greens or a third party? No, just don't. Legion Miller.
This is not the election to do that.
Yeah, this is not. Legion Miller did a really good video on why you shouldn't do it. Just bite your tongue.
This is not the year for the Mickey Mouse protest vote, guys.
Yeah, don't make the protest vote. Go and vote Democrats. And also,
it looks like Eva fixed their name. Good job.
Yeah. Also, just remember that what happens in America happens over here. As I said, Queensland just voted in our LNP, which is effectively it's the Liberal Party, but the Liberal Party in Australia for some reason is the Conservative Party. So we had a guy. The guy is not promising that he's going to protect abortion rights in Queensland, and there is so much Christian nationalism.
We don't want to get
We don't want to, but I'm
because
just
we're
saying,
talking about the. I know, but we need to do that in a different stream, because there are some people that are more conservative that are members of the union that might be offended by us getting into that kind of side of politics. The point of this was to tell the side of the story that a lot of folks are not hearing, specifically about Boeing. Let's not get too deep into that. I know that my normal audience is very excited to hear about that stuff. We can do it on another bridge, because guess what? This is a bridge episode, guys. What does that mean?
it means that we might do another bridge episode later.
Which, by the way, this is also proof. Mero and I have still been friends. We did not have any kind of falling out or anything. We've actually been in contact as often as either of us can be through this entire period of time.
Yes.
She's still my co-host. We're still doing the bridge together. She had some issues with her schedule after the car accident, and then I had some issues with mine after I got trained for my new job, because it has absolutely swallowed a lot of my time. I love my new job, but it has.
Yes.
I've been asked by a few people, is my channel dead? It's not. It's just on a hiatus. I don't know how long it's going to be before I can do content regularly, or if I'm going to go back to doing it full time ever, or treat it as anything more than a hobby. Thoughts are up in the air about starting a second channel on a different topic. I'm not sure. It's going to run into the same problem as this one, which is I've been working on a video for a year, the same one I was working on when the car accident happened, and it's just competing with all of my other hobbies. But also, I've been kind of enjoying life without a lot of drama in it. And quite frankly, being a content creator is a lot of stress and a lot of drama. I'm still running the Bridge community. We are working on reinstating doing rituals more often in the community again. So people are excited about that. We're hoping to do that again. But for right now, I'm not sure how often or when things are going to happen again as far as the channel goes. Not because I'm considering quitting entirely, but because it's a hobby for me at this point. I like my new job. I like having more money, because for all those people who thought I was doing this for money, I make literally quadruple what I was making on YouTube now. I did content creation because I wanted to get 101 stuff out there for my tradition, and I wanted to do allyship work with other communities on YouTube. As you guys know, that's what the Bridge was founded for. And I think that I accomplished that, honestly. I think that I have covered as many of the 101 topics as I possibly could. And so we're kind of at the point where I can cover some more advanced stuff or just talk about history. But most of what I set out to do, I've done. So I'm trying to figure out how much of what's left that I wanted to do, that's on the giant pile of topics, I'm going to have time for, basically. I also have a book that I've been trying to write for 5 years that is the sequel to the other two that I already have out on the market. So that's another thing that's competing for my time. My wargaming and painting is competing for my time. So for those of you who are curious, the Bridge is probably going to start up again, and Mero and I are going to try to get some kind of schedule at some point. But it's going to be the two of us trying to negotiate and hoping that my job doesn't dump a ton more work on me, because I'm a contract worker, and sometimes it just does that.
Yeah, it's a missed high five kind of thing. It's pretty hard. I mean, I got to reach through alternate dimensions, and it does take a while for the black hole to let me do the high five with Ali. So yeah, just don't expect it to be a terribly consistent schedule, but there will be a schedule of something. Yeah,
we're gonna try to do some more live streams on topics that are important, on politics, on science, on lots of things. I might even do some solo streams from time to time, but for at least the foreseeable future, it's a hobby for me at this point. I can't do it full time right now. My Patreon has not actually charged anybody since the car accident. That's going to change. I already put out notice to my patrons. Unfortunately, Patreon itself, because of changes to the policy of iOS, according to the Patreon people that sent me an email, is going to force us as of November to switch from per creation to per month. I talked to my patrons about this and was vehemently shouted down when I offered to shut down my Patreon. Most of them said that they wanted to continue to support the work that I was doing in the community, rather than only wanting to support the work for the show itself. So that's going to continue. Mero and I, when the Bridge starts up again, we have our agreements. That's going to continue to be what it is. Your guys' super chats will support both of us. I have no idea what's going to happen with the part for the show today, because she and I haven't talked about that yet. And it was kind of impromptu. But going forward, we have a 50-50 split. We've always been public about that, but it's not 50-50 of the number you put in. It's 50-50 of what YouTube lets me keep of that, because YouTube takes a third of it.
Yeah, so it's 50-50 of a third of the super chat. So if you
Or
guys want to,
or 2/3, I think.
yeah, well, 2/3 math. Yeah. So Onyx says, "Don't you mean Ikeda super chats?" Yeah. So
yeah, I mean, it's Ikeda. Speaking of which, write faster. Apparently, I've been threatened with the Rusty Spork. I'm waiting for the book too. Yeah, he's one of the few people who actually knew about the book. I don't advertise my books. Yeah, if you know my writing handle, you can find them. I have never connected those two sides of my life. I haven't connected most of my personal life to my YouTube stuff either. I've kind of kept all those things separate, mostly just because, I like having portions of my life where I can kind of escape all of the drama from social media. Because, again, quite frankly, we're not going to talk about any of it, but there was a lot of stuff going on at the time of the car accident that also just compounded problems due to constant drama, and I am allergic to drama. So being away from all of that and just being another cog in somebody's machine and doing something that I know actually is like what I do for a living, I'm not going to specify, but what I do for a living definitely contributes to society in a way that is important. And I feel good about that.
Yeah. No jokes about her being a stripper.
Yes, I'm not. I do not have an OnlyFans, and I never will. And not that there's anything wrong with that. It's not, I did that when I was younger. Not so interested now.
Yeah. Singham, yeah, the best is to, says, so I guess I'm better off sending money to the two of you directly. That is what you're saying. Yes, that is the best way.
Yes, Achilles, I have talked about in the past, I worked for a telephone line that was an inappropriate telephone line. Yes. A 18 plus call line. I did that when I was younger. I was pretty good at it too. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. It is perfectly legal. It was perfectly legal to do it. It maybe the way that the line operated wasn't great. But it was actually kind of a blast. Like, I had a lot of fun, but I've been public about that. I have talked about it in past live streams. That is not a secret. It is a public information that I worked for one of those when I was way younger. It helped put me through college. Actually, I worked a few jobs to get through college. I didn't get a lot of help from my family. And by that, I mean, I didn't get any.
Yeah. All right. So
what are you working on? Because you're actually working on something.
I am. One of the benefits of breaking yourself is that you have to stay at home for 3 weeks straight. And so that's given me more of a kick up the butt to work on a script. So my last video,
you don't need more ways to pay me.
So my last script was how to pick a good scientific journal. Now I'm working on how to pick a good scientific article, and it's going to be in the same format of Nerdadia, who has an Irish accent, but it's really quite crap. So I really apologize to every single person right now who is listening to my Irish accent, especially anyone from Ireland. Please forgive me. I understand. Anyway, and also Godless Australian, who is obviously Satan. Anyway, it's a lot of fun. You should watch it. It's good for a giggle and has some really important information. And I'm currently working on how to pick a good scientific article where the three characters come back, and I end up insulting myself quite a lot during that time. So yeah, hopefully it'll be just as fun, if not more fun, than the previous video. So yeah.
Yep, and I'm apparently going to get to preview the script. I am still her script editor, but unfortunately, Australian inflation is even worse than ours right now.
Yeah, so she's more of the I'll read this and don't edit
it. I don't want to pay it.
Yeah, just read it and tell me what you think of it. You don't have to edit it. Just let me know if there's anything that I should add.
Psionic, my OnlyFans would be photos of my bookshelf, because quite honestly, I think that would be much more pleasing to most of my audience.
Oh, I forgot something. It's important.
Oh, are we bringing Lilith out? Or are we bringing... You're bringing Thyla out.
Yeah, no, we don't bring Lilith out. Lilith likes to consume me.
Oh my god.
Yeah. So little snack. She's
AJ,
like, what?
I have
What?
AJ Rose. I have in fact posted pictures of my bookshelves before. Not updated ones in a while, but yeah, I have a entire floor to ceiling bookshelf that is nothing but scholarly books that I have used for my work. It is. If it were not for my patrons, I would not afford to have it. If it were not for the folks who have helped me out with that book wish list, I would not be able to afford to have it. A lot of it I did buy with my own money or with money from Patreon. In fact, you can ask patrons if there are any in the chat. I know Akate is there. I'm extraordinarily open with what I do with patron money.
Yeah. Alrighty, shall we?
Yeah, just to make a clear, Ikeda is not one of them. he is. So I know somebody finds me attractive. I don't know why my partners find me attractive, but that's a whole different problem. I love both of them. I've been with both of them for over 10 years. Both of them. They're both wonderful, and I am incredibly grateful to have them. She is so pretty. She is such a unique snake. That is such a gorgeous snake.
She's so pretty. And she's really good because every time she needs to do a poo, that big lump here tells me she needs to do a poo.
We should probably put her away before she does it on stream.
She every time a tradie comes over, they're like, "Oh, what's that?" And I'm like, "Oh, it's a snake. Do you want to play?" And like, no, 90% of the time they're like, "Nah." And then I pull them out and hold them, and then after like 3 or 4 minutes, I'm like, "Oh, I'll have a pat." And then the next thing they're doing, they're like, "Oh my god, I'm holding a snake. What do I do? What do I do?" Because she's such a beautiful snake, both physically and in personality. People really just fall in love with her quite quickly. So yeah.
AJ, there is nothing special about being noticed on one of my streams. There, A, aren't that many people, and B, I do try to, whether people super chat or not, I prioritize super chat questions because, it's only fair. They paid money. But I always try to answer people's questions as best I can, if I can, and if I think it's a fair question. If I don't know the answer, I'm usually pretty upfront about that. But Bridge streams, we try to be pretty egalitarian because, you shouldn't have to pay money to get our attention. And Mara will notice things sometimes that I miss if you didn't notice.
Yes, like being... Could you please put a comma in that sentence, please?
So Ikeda, I'm more accountable than Boeing. Well, I mean, you can technically go read their income disclosures, I guess, or listen to a shareholder meeting. Go buy a share and you can listen to a shareholder meeting. Except don't do that right now because the stock's tanking at the moment. Like, that's not a great idea. This is not financial advice.
No. Yes, don't buy Boeing.
Eva says, I apologized. All right, so that pretty much wraps up. I went an hour and a half over what I wanted to, or actually I went an hour over what I wanted to, but I wanted to make sure I got as many of your guys' questions answered as I possibly could. Thank you guys so much for coming out. It's the first bridge we've had in a while. We are working on doing some more development in the community. If you're in the server, the team is actually working on overhauling the rules to make them a little more easy to understand because there's a little bit of rambling in them. So we're kind of trimming things down, not getting rid of rules, but clarifying them and streamlining them a little bit because there's a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek kind of funniness to them. And I think the server's matured a bit since we last redid them. So look forward to that. As far as my next release, I have no idea when that's going to be. Mero and I haven't scheduled another bridge yet, but if you're in the server, which links in the description, you'll be the first to know. Because we put out announcements as soon as we make decisions, which sometimes is, day of, because I steeled my courage to quit working on my job and actually just go do the thing that everybody's been DMing me to do for 3 weeks. To those of you who sent me those DMs, I hope you're happy now. And if you guys have anybody that, you're concerned doesn't know what's going on with the strike or they want to know more, feel free to share the link to this live stream. I know it's a little long and rambly, but I tried to sum up as much of the information that you're going to have to dig and watch lots of videos and read tons of stuff. I tried to sum it up as best I could. Yeah. And I tried to talk about the issues that both the folks in my community and also the folks in my physical community, the folks on the strike lines told me they wanted someone to talk about that they weren't hearing talked about in these other places. So I hope we did an okay job.
Yeah, trying to sum up something as complicated as this will take 2.5 hours. So, yeah.
All right, well,
All right. Well, let's go.
Yeah, me
because
rambling. Yes.
if we don't,
All right.
if we
So
don't say
to keep
goodbye
this
now,
from being a rambling goodbye, thank you guys so much. I hope you guys have a wonderful, wonderful evening. And remember, we're stronger together.
all right. See you later, everybody. Bye.